Studio's open this coming Saturday.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the November 27th, 2017 administration meeting. The first thing we need to do is approve the minutes from August 28th, 2017.
That long ago, but they look like what happened.
Yes.
So, yes.
I will second.
Yes, okay. Well, then we had a correction and everything will be updated. So those we can accept. The second thing, I'm on the wrong meeting. Hold on a second. Sorry. Hold on, no, sorry. I'm right here,
It was
sorry.
the October
Sorry,
23rd
October
meetings.
23rd. We're
Yes.
good. All right, second thing is the Moscow Library Public Art Project. Hi, Ms. Burns.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay, thanks, Jen. So I made a little quick PowerPoint. You had a lot of information in your agenda quick, and so I'm trying to simplify this a little bit. Melissa Cole was selected by our subcommittee with the Public Art Project, and in your descriptive, I told you who was in the selection committee. A couple people are here today. Chris Sokol from the library is here, and Catherine Clancy is here. Bruce Haglund might come in. I don't know if Jim Bolin will be here, but and Laurel McCleary and some other folks with the library. So we went through the whole selection process the first time and didn't feel comfortable with the submittals, and so then we reopened it and went a second time and expanded the reach to include Washington, Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, and Nevada, states that circled Idaho. And so with that, we got more submissions, which was great. So after review, we selected Melissa Cole. These are her concepts to work with the flat walls, the flat concrete walls that were a part of the entryway installation for the library. And these are glass mosaics that she'll be working with. So these are her concepts. And then I took it a little farther to show you a little detail that she submitted. So you can see on the right the detail of the pollinator and flowers, and then that would be on the wall below the tree. So she was real thorough in her application, which was great. And then there'll be a freestanding piece in this landscape area, which will be another pollinator, and that's the image to the right of the flower and the other bee. So these are some of her installations. She's already done one for the city of Spokane, for public works facilities in Spokane, and they installed it in the Spokane Convention Center. And you see it hanging up there. It's a bunch of different panels. And then you might be familiar with her work because she did some pieces in Lewiston, Idaho. And I just wanted to highlight this railroad bridge because a lot of the pieces on the railroad bridge were done by community members in workshops. And a great part of her submission was to do community workshops. And so in her contract, there's 3 community workshops to do. And then this was the funding. We have $10,000 coming from the 1% for public art from our existing budget. And then we have a grant that we're working with Idaho Commission on the Arts, which is a public art grant, and that's $6,194. And then the balance of the project is with the Moscow Public Library. And so the total of the project is $30,000. So I just wanted to present to you today because per the public art guidelines in the public art master plan, this needs to be approved by full council. So we start here in admin, and then staff's recommendation is that you refer it to full council and take a vote.
Yeah, I just had a question. It had to do with, it said it had to be installed by May of 2018, but it actually said May 15th. Does that have any wiggle room?
Oh, you know, I'll be working with the project the entire time,
Okay,
and if we have to, this is a contract thanks to Rod, our
thanks,
legal,
Rod.
which is great.
Yeah.
We had to schedule the payments
Yeah.
per production. And so we'd like to have it secured and installed because we want to do a ribbon cutting and unveiling for Art Walk, which is June 15th.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So, yep.
Yeah, that's good. That was the question I had just about, because it read as a contract, and I wanted to make sure. And then the other thing, in the display pieces, it looks like there's murals within so behind the brick walls, there's another, I just didn't understand. That's why I just wanted clarification on
Yep.
how it looks.
So there's 3 walls she's working with.
Yeah.
This is up on the plaza behind the planter, is one wall. And then she highlighted the 2 walls in the front that is adjacent to the sidewalk. And those are poured concrete. Yep.
There's nothing within the beds?
No,
Okay.
it's behind.
It's just the way it looks in
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
There is the freestanding one.
Yeah,
The
but that's just
freestanding one is in a landscape
Yeah.
area to the right of the plaza.
Where's that picture?
There's, between the new plaza and then the old entrance to the Carnegie, there's a landscape area there.
Hold on.
So that's where it's proposed for that freestanding.
What kind of balance remains in the arts fund?
This would be, after 10,000, we have about 58,000.
I know it's on page 12, and it just talks figure 5 and 6 and 7. It's not on the flat concrete parts. And I had wondered if there were things that were going in there.
Oh, no, you're looking at the original call, and those were options for submission. Like, those
okay.
just gave artists ideas
Oh, okay.
on locations with the library to work with.
Oh, all right.
Okay,
All right.
so you were reading it out of the application.
Okay, great.
And that's a shout out to engineering and to DJ for helping us with those flat surfaces. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, very good. All right. Anything that
I
you'd
think
like
we
to
should
add?
forward it to full council with a thumbs up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know Chris is probably excited because the library's trying to make plans for renovations and stuff, and this probably won't get anything disturbed, maybe. Wouldn't that be?
It shouldn't, no.
Yeah.
In fact, there's some drainage construction going in.
Yep.
behind those two
Yeah.
buildings right now, so by next spring and summer will be some replantings going on, and everything will all come together.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out too, for.
Come on up. Come on
I
up.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
For the council members who don't know, the pollinator, I have.
Just go ahead and introduce yourself too, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris Sokol, Director of Latah County Library District. The entryway out front there was intended, when it was installed about 4 years ago, it was intended to be a water-wise, pollinator-friendly garden. I just wanted to make that connection between her pollinator design and.
I just figured it's
what's
also
actually-
libraries or pollinators.
That's true. That's a really good one. I'm going to use that.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you. I think it's super exciting
It's very
for
exciting.
our community. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank Kathleen for persevering on this so much, too. Kathleen and DJ, this was a big project, and thank you.
Yeah.
So brave people.
Yeah. Very cool.
And we can take that contract to consent agenda if you'd like, and then we'll do other updates on the project as we go forward. Would be the anticipation.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 is the amendment to the MCC Title IX, Chapter 6, 7, and 8 alcohol catering permits, presented by Rod Hall, our attorney for the city.
Good afternoon, committee members. Today I'm here with some proposed amendments to our alcohol catering permits. The city has the authority to require anybody who's going to sell alcohol within the city limits to get a city license. Somebody who wants to sell alcohol either at a restaurant or at a bar or at a grocery store has to get a state license first through the state alcohol and beverage control. And then they also have to get a county license. Then cities have the authority to require those businesses to also get a city license. If they don't, then all they would need would be a county and a state license. City of Moscow requires that they get a license from the city, and if anybody wants to do a catering permit where they sell wine or beer or liquor off their licensed premises, for on-site consumption, then they need to get a catering permit. Under the state statute, it gives the authority to the city to require them to get licensed through the city. If the city didn't require that, they would have to get a county license for the catering permits. We had a request, well, just a little background. In the last few years, you probably have noticed that wineries and microbreweries throughout this region have started to grow. With Lewiston area and south of there, we've got a designated wine country, Upper Columbia River region, so it's got some national prestige there, and there's a lot of more wineries coming in there. And then there's also Moscow has seen microbreweries pop up, and also within the county. We had an organization that wanted to have a microbrewery that come up from Kendrick, just outside of or within Latah County, and our statute or our ordinance did not allow that because you had to have a city license for on-site consumption. And so what this amendment would do is would require or would allow anybody with a state and a county license to be able to come in and ask for a catering permit from the city. And if we go through the ordinance, I'll just ask you to turn 70, it's going to be something that I need some direction on today. For the alcohol catering permit to allow somebody, one of the microbreweries, to come in, under the state statute, they've started breaking them down into different categories. A small microbrewery that was designated at $30,000. It's basically for tax purposes, that's how they tax it. And so those are normally the smaller microbreweries. And then the other section would be anybody who has a brewer's license. That could even be Anheuser-Busch in eastern Idaho. The question is, do we want to allow anybody who has a brewery's license to be able to come into the city, or do we want to just keep it within the industry of the microbreweries? And so at the end of the day, we'd like some direction on those. There's two choices for B. One would be limited to the microbreweries. That would be more into keeping in touch with the growing industry, the microbreweries in this region, rather than a large full-scale alcohol brewery coming in or a beer distributor coming through. And then on the other section, just to clarify any confusion that may, after reading this, there's a lot of confusion that I had. But there's a reason that you can get a couple months ago, I guess it was last year, when we expanded the catering permits from 3 days to 5 days that the state law allowed. Wineries are allowed to do 7 days. So we put some clarifying language in there. So if somebody comes in for a catering permit, they could get one for up to 5 days if they're liquor or wine. And also if you're a winery, you could get up to 7. And so I just wanted to explain if anybody had any question about that. Other than that, basically what this ordinance would allow anybody who has a county license and the state license to be able to apply and receive a catering permit within the city limits.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Just a question, thanks for the explanation between the 5 and 7. So even if you were to cater wine, you would be limited to 5 days unless you were an actual winery. Is that?
No, a winery can come in and get a catering permit for 7 days.
Okay. But like a
No,
local...
Beer and wine cannot.
Beer and wine
Right,
can.
so a local business has a 5-day limit to cater within the city.
Yes.
But a winery, regardless of, with this new, even if they're outside of the city, could have 7 days. That's just the way it's
Yes.
written by the state.
Okay, well, but if you are a licensed winery within the city,
Yeah.
because we used to have one,
Yeah.
you have to be a winery.
Okay.
Relative to the choice between the two types, the microbrew versus anybody, I think that allowing the organizers to choose which way they want to go would be more flexible and advantageous, because that would not preclude the small craft brewers and would include everybody else too. And so I think it is something that we should just leave to the organizers of the event and not really worry about micromanaging it to that extent.
Are there reasons to not consider that?
Well, I mean, the whole idea was coming through was because, trying to support the growing industry of the local wineries and the microbreweries. Let's say that Anheuser-Busch decided they want to come up and put they have a brewer's license, but then they also have some distribution system up here. They would be able to come in and, probably do things a lot less expensive.
Well, they'd kind of be at the behest of the organizers, I would think. And so if the organizer wanted craft brew, they could have it, or if they were having an event where the participants might more appreciate something with a last name Light on it, they could have access to that if they wanted.
No, they would still be able to. The microbrewers can sell other
Right.
other alcohol that they have.
Yeah.
Just like, and we're also adding is wine, if you have a winer's license coming in for the permit, we're adding that they could sell beer with it too. So they're not just restricted to the wine like how we think it is currently.
And it doesn't matter how often you want to do this? There's no time period in between. However many events people want to plan, they can apply and...
Yes, I can get you that. You can't have that regularly. There is a limitation on how often that you can get a catering permit.
Oh, okay, yeah. I
Well,
started
city,
looking at
city
the
clerk,
code now.
remember what that duration is?
It's not an exact,
Yeah, it's not precise, but it's kind of some kind of reasonable
not
enough.
regularly.
Not regularly.
Can't be
Weekly.
Because when people have garage sales and stuff, they do that kind of thing too. Like you can't have them for more than 2 weeks, or you can't have them more than 6 times a year, and all that kind of stuff. And I had just wondered, especially in the summer season,
There is a
about
limit,
that kind of stuff. Okay.
but it's not precise.
So we just need to plan to talk about it more when it comes up. And then we did have a letter that I had asked Art to read for us in support.
Yeah, there's a letter from Tom Lamar, one of our county commissioners, and the letter says, I understand, well, we'll skip that part, but go on to the meat of the letter. I'm writing to go on record in favor of the code modification. I believe it is helpful for economic growth and responsible from an alcohol regulatory standpoint to allow Moscow catering events to include purveyors from outside the city limits of Moscow. This past summer, I was involved in hosting an event at the PCEI Nature Center, 1040 Rodeo Drive, Moscow, that was to involve Hardware Brewing Company of Kendrick, Idaho. Hardware Brewing holds a license from the state of Idaho, as well as permits from Latah County and the city of Kendrick. Since Hardware Brewing Company also does not have a City of Moscow permit, they temporarily experienced some difficulty obtaining the necessary catering permit from the City of Moscow over a strict interpretation of the word city. I believe this code modification/clarification in question today will help the code more accurately reflect the intention of the council of a few years ago when we last looked at this issue. Future events will flow more smoothly and will enable good product diversity from within our region. Thanks for your time, Tom Lamar.
Okay. So we communicated. That would make sure that we got that in. And I can see the quandary between 30,000 barrels and less or any other business. And I kind of lean actually in Art's direction of like letting the event people decide what they want to do, even though
We would like to encourage the
Any
craft
events.
brewers
Yeah,
and
of course.
smaller folks around, but I think you'd be nuts not to go with the craft brewers myself, but that's just my palate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also wonder, if I were to think of many different breweries, I don't know if it's pretty obvious that clear cutoff of which ones are 30,000 more and less, and do we want to have to be monitoring that? And if a brewery that starts off small really grows and then suddenly no longer
Is
falls
considered-
under that, even though they started as that, I don't know that it needs to be as,
That would be licensed
Built
by,
to
the
monitor.
state would regulate that.
Yeah.
So when they reach that threshold on their license would indicate that.
Yeah. So you're asking really for our recommendation, should
Well,
we?
yes, this is coming from you. I was just asked to
Yep.
I know.
to craft this from the city clerk, and I just came through there, what are we trying to do?
Yeah.
It's not my ordinance, it's going to be your ordinance, so
Well, I just think it's been interesting to see how events are changing and growing and people are rethinking them. And so to have a wide open, plate of things to choose from is where we want to go with that. And so if we feel we need to make a declaration in another direction, we can discuss that and find out.
Well,
But-
I think that it could possibly be a way to reward a smaller local business that made really good and actually grew to actually still be able to be involved with the local events without being precluded by a cutoff if they happen to hit it big time.
Yeah, I like what Brandy was saying, and I think that's what people, the whole microbrewery thing, like, so I think we're leaning toward the B
In B.
BB.
and B.
The beneath the or.
Yeah.
Thought we were making reference to the new Star Wars.
Touche.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
Yep.
so if you want this to go forward, I would do the second alternative, B.
Yeah, and we'll have a full discussion, put it on regular agenda, of course, because
Yeah,
it's an
it's an
ordinance,
ordinance.
but definitely, I think it'll be interesting to hear what everybody else has to say, too.
So when the full discussion happens, will we still be discussing the two options? Or are we just moving the second one forward
Well,
for discussion?
we're moving the second one forward, but the group may decide they like
Yeah.
the other one better, and we may end up in the other direction. So at this committee, that's kind of what we've thought, but at council, it may change.
Yeah, if we propose, if there's an ordinance that's proposed before you, council can make changes to it.
Yeah.
You just put it on the record, and then you can pass it, and then it
Okay.
gets changed
Yeah.
after.
And it
Especially
gives-
from the point of view that this was submitted with the recommendation from the administrative committee for this
Right,
option.
Yeah.
but will the other option be there somewhere for people to see it? That's what I...
We'll typically include that in legislative format, so you would see the strike through and see it still as an option
Perfect.
there, but
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll figure out how to get there. Plus, this has already been out there, they know
Yeah.
about it, and you can bring it up and talk about it.
Yeah,
We'll
no,
just- I'll
I
have
think
a
it's
clean
really
version.
interesting. I thought the 30,000 barrels was kind of I don't have any, Concepts, yeah.
Because that's a lot.
I know.
okay.
Nobody around here, if you make, once you break $30,000, you're actually probably doing pretty well, and you're probably a regional, and with the microbreweries these days, they're growing so fast, you'd really have to be really super good or have been in the market first.
Yeah, so I mean, so something like Deschutes that actually has quite a lot, are they beyond that at this
Oh,
point?
they're
well
national.
over.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they,
I
So
don't
think of
them as a
something like,
microbrew.
think of something like No-Lie
But, yeah.
up in Spokane.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, and
Because they're right on the cusp.
Okay.
and there's several up in the Spokane area. In this whole region, actually, there's a whole lot.
Yeah, things are changing.
But remember, the thing is, if they're in Washington, they're not going to be able to come to Idaho because there's strict regulations on interstate, unless they come in and establish a business within the state of Idaho and get a distributor.
Very good. All right, well, I think we know what we're doing by moving it to council with making sure the language is there so people understand what we're discussing, looking at the or B version. All right, thanks, Rod. And with that, we got to have Sarah Banks. She's going to report on Series 2008 Sewer Revenue Bond Refinance and Refunding Report.
I get to hear it twice.
Yes.
Hello again. Yes, so since the last conversation, the refunding did go through,
Yeah.
and we received 5 proposals from 4 different entities. And we currently have Eric Herringer from Piper Jaffray, Herringer, I'm sorry, I say that wrong. Herringer from Piper Jaffray, he's our financial advisor. He did send out a memo today, which I'm going to give to you. I also presented it earlier. And it kind of lays out the 5 different proposals that we received, the interest rates, and kind of the meat behind what it was. And after a thorough review, they are recommending that we go with Zion's Bank. And that interest rate is 2.48%, and it is a constant rate. Wells Fargo did present a lower interest rate than that, but it's one that was subject to change. So it was recommended that we not go with that. And so that's where we're at this point with it. So
And this is just following up on the presentation that Gary did at council
correct.
to make sure we understand all this.
This
Okay.
is our 2008 series bonds for the sewer project. That would be, see if I got the end dates right. This would take us out through 2028.
Yep.
2011, we saw another refinance of a different series of bonds, and that takes us through 2022. Their original issue was 2002. So those end dates don't change, but the savings that we can realize within those periods,
Yeah, that's
we take
really good.
advantage
Yeah,
of those.
they're believing it's going to be approximately 1.85%. savings. So it comes out to about 444,000 approximately. We have to turn around 100,000 to go back into the refinance, so it'll be about 344,000. The numbers will be finalized after this goes through, and Eric Herringer will be here on December 4th for that council meeting to present and answer further questions if there is anything at that time.
I think it's also important to note for the record that these are not GO bonds.
Correct.
These are individual and pertain only to the sewer fund.
Yes, and they are revenue bonds, so they do not have to do with our debt capacity and debt service. Yes.
All right. Is there anything else that you heard in the previous meeting you wanted to make sure was passed along?
I think it's still great.
Good
job.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you for your
Yeah.
report.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we can adjourn.
Lower the gavel. Boom.